Miami 20-12. They improved to 9-5. The Texans defense forced Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa into 4 turnovers. Browns running back Nick Chubb broke his foot in Sunday's loss to the Chiefs. That ends his season with 3 games left. Browns coach Kevin Stefanski believes that Chubb's foot was stepped on. He left the game in the 3rd quarter. Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes suffered an ankle injury in the game. It's unclear if he'll be available to play this coming Saturday against the Texans. Top 25 Hoop Sunday, number 3 Iowa State beat Omaha 83-51. Number 12 Oregon 79-61 over Stephen F. Austin. The latest AP Top 25 college basketball poll is due out today. No current ranked teams on the schedule tonight, but tomorrow current number 1 Tennessee battles Western Carolina. Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
If you've been putting off holiday shopping, you're not alone. But the holidays are next week, so it's time to kick things into high gear. Macy's Holiday Countdown Sale is here to make last-minute shopping easy with great deals on top gifts like cozy hat, scarf, and glove sets from Coach, Kate Spade & More for $49.99. Boxed up and ready to give. Easy. So if you haven't gotten to everyone on your list yet, don't be too hard on yourself, but do shop Macy's ASAP. These deals end Thursday. Savings off already reduced prices. Exclusions apply.
This year, American farmers will harvest 2.8 billion bushels of wheat and 15.1 billion bushels of corn. And to this day, American road workers have built 4.2 million miles of roads and counting. We're proud that John Deere machines rolling off the line here in the USA play a part in supporting Americans who work the land and build a better tomorrow. Nothing runs like a Deere. Learn more at johndeere.com/manufacturing.
No way football is played in the fall and winter.
Because the hits don't hurt as much when you're numb. Get the lowdown on all the sports action coming up right here.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
A new week begins right here, right now on Football Full Circle. It is FFC, all a part of the SportsGrid Radio Network and Sirius XM Channel 159. That is the mastermind of the pigskin. That is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. We are here on a Monday to look back on a Sunday slate, week number 15 around the National Football League. 4 weeks remain in this NFL regular season after a doubleheader of Monday Night Football to finish out week number 15 that we will preview for you here on FFC. Just 3 weeks left in the regular season around the National Football League. So, Joe, if you are in that playoff hunt, if you are looking for a spot, a seed, whatever it might be, each and every game for the remainder of this season, critically important, and we saw that on a Sunday around the NFL.
Yeah, we did, and we even saw that battle last night play out between Green Bay and Seattle, a great game that Green Bay prevails. Geno Smith gets hurt. What does that do in terms of the NFC West title picture? We saw Arizona get off the mat. We saw the victory on Thursday night by the LA Rams, and we saw the best game potentially, at least from the buildup, of Buffalo and Detroit. The Bills prevail on the road. Now that race between the number 1 seed between Detroit and Philadelphia, deadlocked at 12-2 overall record. Now it gets interesting over the next 4 or 5 weeks, Ben.
A race for the top spot in the AFC as well, in changing markets to win a conference championship and maybe play for a Lombardi trophy. Joe, the 4:25 p.m. Eastern time window on Sunday in week 15, as good as you will find. You mentioned that game in Buffalo. We really had 2 games yesterday afternoon that felt as though they could be potential Super Bowl previews. The game in Detroit between the Lions and the Bills. The game in Philadelphia between the Eagles and the Steelers. Let's start in the Motor City. Buffalo, for a second consecutive week, plays in the highest scoring game of the NFL season. 86 combined points, but in a loss 2 Sundays ago now in LA against the Rams. 90 combined points yesterday, but in a win on the road in Detroit. The Bills win 48-42 outright as a 2.5-point road underdog. Joe, the highest total of the year, 54.5, 55.5 in spots. By the time we reached kick yesterday in the Motor City, stood no chance. It's skies over. Buffalo snaps Detroit's 11-game win streak. The Bills have won 8 of their last 9. Buffalo is now 11-3.
Yeah, and think about, just the spread perspective yesterday. We talked about it on Pro Football Today, right? You had Detroit, Ben, that had won 11 straight games. The first 9, they had won by an average margin of around 19 and a half points per game. The last 2 victories over Green Bay and Chicago were by a total of 6 points. They didn't cover in both of those wins. And Buffalo, everybody thought, because they lost on the road last week to the Rams, that they would just lay up against a better offense and defense in Detroit. That wasn't the case. We saw James Cook, the rushing attack, take over. They pounded the rock. They built a first half lead. They were aggressive in regards to the play calling, and the defense really handcuffed Jared Goff for much of that game, especially in terms of critical third down. So when you run the football and you basically are turnover free, more times than not, you're going to be within margin, and they were yesterday. They set the tempo right from the onset, and they won it convincingly, Ben. Buffalo is a legit Super Bowl contender.
Buffalo has won 8 of its last 9 games. They have covered in 7 of those 9. They have gone over in 7 of 9. They have now scored 30 consecutive points in 8 straight games. This Buffalo offense is a wagon right now, and led, Joe, by the hefty MVP favorite who keeps stacking up significant games and historic marks. Josh Allen, now a minus 900 favorite to win the NFL MVP award. 362 passing yards against the Lions, 2 passing scores, 68 more on the ground, 2 rushing scores. He had 6 total touchdowns a Sunday ago. He became the first ever player in NFL history with 3 passing scores and 3 rushing touchdowns in the same game. The week prior, first quarterback ever with a passing, rushing, and receiving score in a game. He has 4 total touchdowns and more than 400 total yards yesterday as well. Joe, this Buffalo offense is rolling in the way that you would hope entering a postseason stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about an identity, right? And their quarterbacks playing at an elite MVP level. But when they were successful, especially last year, and they made it to the playoffs, they had an identity of running the football, right? Especially in road environments. You want to be able to run the football, playoff environments. And that's what they did yesterday with James Cook. His total yesterday, Ben, was like 60 and a half pre-kick, right? He blows right through that with 2 big touchdowns. He's an explosive playmaker. Ty Johnson and Ray Davis. I mean, in the playoff type of situation, they have 4 players that could take the game over as it relates to the rushing attack. And I'm including Josh Allen in there that did rush for over 50 yards. This was a dominant effort, great offensive line effort. And again, that defense really showed up when it had to. 8 of 9 wins is no joke. And both of these teams are going to be there for the Super Bowl discussion. We'll see if they can meet in the end. Might be a Super Bowl preview.
The Bills have not been great defensively either of the past 2 weeks, but that game being 48-42 really made it seem a little bit closer than perhaps it was in those critical junctures yesterday in Detroit. But Joe, for the Lions, a defense and a team marred by injuries this year, and it only got worse yesterday. Aleem McNeil, as we have learned on this Monday morning, one of the best interior defensive linemen in the National Football League, out for the remainder of the year, suffering a torn ACL against the Bills. Carlton Davis, with a fractured jaw, is out for at least 6 weeks throughout the end of the regular season and deep into a playoff run. You have to feel for Detroit. They are still 12-2. They still sit atop the NFC right now. Same record as Philadelphia, but a better conference win percentage for Detroit, so they still occupy that number 1 overall seed. But Joe, for this Lions team, that was 9-2 against the spread through 12 weeks. They have now not covered in 3 straight. With the defensive issues and the woes, yes, we are going to hear next man up. I'm not sure how many men are even left on this Detroit defensive roster to make a difference. The Lions should still be there at the end of the road. The Lions are still the favorites to win the NFC, but based on the result yesterday, Joe, and perhaps the long-term injury concern for Detroit, Buffalo is now the Super Bowl favorite to win Super Bowl 59 at plus 420, 30 cents in front of the Lions.
Yeah, I mean, and deserving. I mean, you could put the argument that, Philly is there after their 10th straight win and how they beat up a very good Pittsburgh team. I mean, it's splitting hairs. I think when you look, Ben, two best teams in the AFC right now, Buffalo and Kansas City, right? Two best teams, obviously, in the NFC, Detroit and Philadelphia. So you want to split hairs between all four of those in a playoff type of situation, depending upon how it plays out with a number one overall seed. Hey, go ahead. We know the best team, though, when it comes to playoff time, until you unseat them, is the Kansas City Chiefs. But Buffalo already did it. They could beat them in the regular season. We'll see if they could do it in a playoff type of situation.
And, Joe, those are the four shortest prices to win a Super Bowl right now, but Kansas City the longest out of that group of four teams that you just mentioned at 6-1. Detroit plus 450, Philadelphia 5-1 as well. Joe, we'll talk about the Eagles on the other side. We will also discuss the Kansas City Chiefs. A victory yesterday in Cleveland, 21-7. The Chiefs cover as a 4.5-point road favorite. A total of 41.5 stays under. It was the largest margin of victory for Kansas City this year. But of course, Joe, a ton of focus on the right ankle of Patrick Mahomes. A high ankle sprain is what Kansas City is calling it. He was injured with just about 8 minutes remaining in that fourth and final quarter. Patrick Mahomes' injury outlook, what it means for the AFC playoff picture, and of course, we'll detail the Keystone clash yesterday in Philadelphia between the Eagles and the Steelers. That's next on Football Full Circle.
Don't look like an idiot at work.
Know your stuff.
Football and everything else.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
ABC News has agreed to pay $15 million toward Donald Trump's presidential library to settle a defamation lawsuit over anchor George Stephanopoulos' inaccurate on-air assertion that the president-elect had been found civilly liable for raping writer E. Jean Carroll. A part of the settlement made public Saturday, ABC News posted an editor's note to its website expressing regret over Stephanopoulos' statements during a March 10th segment on his This Week program. The network will also pay $1 million in legal fees to the law firm of Trump's attorney. Roughly 70,000 gallons of oil from a pipeline spilled into the ground in Wisconsin. The problem was discovered November 11th in Jefferson County, 60 miles west of Milwaukee, by an Enbridge energy technician. Enbridge said the spill on the company's Line 6 was caused by a faulty connection on a pump transfer pipe at the Enbridge Cambridge station. It was an estimated 1,650 barrels, which is equivalent to about 70,000 gallons. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
This year, American farmers will harvest 2.8 billion bushels of wheat and 15.1 billion bushels of corn. And to this day, American road workers have built 4.2 million miles of roads and counting. We're proud that John Deere machines rolling off the line here in the USA play a part in supporting Americans who work the land and build a better tomorrow. Nothing runs like a Deere. Learn more at johndeere.com/manufacturing.
Not to brag, but Progressive's Name Your Price tool is mankind's greatest tool ever. Even better than the wheel. Sure, without the wheel, we wouldn't have modern transportation or funny videos of dogs riding skateboards. But without the Name Your Price tool, we wouldn't have easy access to auto insurance options based on our budget. And, well, cars do need wheels. They also need insurance, and insurance never goes flat. Learn more about the greatest tool ever, the Name Your Price tool at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Fall is almost here.
It's time to stow the lawnmower and get ready for all that glorious action coming your way. Stay tuned to SportsGrid for all the strategies, angles, and info you need to get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC. He is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. So, Lisi, guy, one of the big moments of yesterday's Sunday slate in Cleveland. About 8 minutes remaining in regulation with the Chiefs ahead by 2 touchdowns, 21-7. That was the final score. The Chiefs did cover as a 4.5, 5.5 point road favorite, as a 6.5 point favorite or less this year. KC is now 5-2 against the spread. In the 14-point margin, highest margin of victory for Kansas City this year. But of course, Joe, the focus on Patrick Mahomes. He left the game with what the Chiefs are calling a high ankle sprain. After the game, Andy Reid and Mahomes both asked about his availability moving forward. Both said he could have came back into the game if they needed to, if it was close and competitive. But his status for a short week, a Saturday afternoon game at home against the Houston Texans, certainly up in the air. Joe, how detrimental would it be if Patrick Mahomes has to miss a few weeks for the Chiefs?
Oh, huge. Well, huge. I mean, huge in the sense of you don't want it to linger into the playoffs, right? As long as it's just a sprain and it's not anything serious, then, the Kansas City Chiefs will be just fine in the sense of, a playoff type of situation. But they still are the number one overall seed. They did it with a dominant first half offensive effort. Mahomes was sharp for early on. They did it in terms of the passing attack. He had 2 passing touchdowns. Should have had 3 when they counted the reverse to Xavier Worthy as a run as opposed to a pop pass. But besides that defense closed the door on Cleveland, and they're a very difficult defense, potentially bounce back in a big way with that effort on the road. So they play like that, where they're opportunistic and they're running the football with Pacheco, then it's not a problem. But if you have to rely on Carson Wentz to back up, that's a huge cause of concern, especially in terms of a playoff situation and number one overall seed. So right now, tempered.
Yeah.
I watched that game yesterday. He was moving around. He still played with the bad ankle. It's that when they had the 14-point lead, they took him out with about 5 minutes left just to honestly rest him up, I think, and just to see how bad it is. But hopefully it's nothing important.
Well, just to clarify, he got injured with 8 minutes and 1 second left in the game on a 4th and 3 attempt. And then
he was in there until 5 minutes. Yes, he did.
No, he was.
I watched the game. He was in there.
I don't believe so, Joe.
Carson Wentz did not take the field until 5:23 in the fourth quarter.
But that's because on a 4th down try, they did not get it. The pass was incomplete, and Cleveland came back onto the field. It's not like Mahomes tried to gut it out on that right ankle, played a couple of snaps, and then was pulled. He didn't play again after that 8-minute mark when the injury occurred.
Okay. All right. So, I watched the game. I know, but it was a 4th down. I assumed that, he wasn't that injured. He was walking around on the sidelines. He was actually had his helmet on. Then they put the Parker on him, and he was gone. That was it. But he was walking around, Pat. It's not like they carted him off. He was in the huddle when Carson Wentz came on. He was standing. I'll show you the game.
I saw it as well. He did walk off the field. He was not carted off. He did need some teammate assistance. He stayed on the sideline, did not head back to the locker room, did walk off the field after the game's conclusion under his own power, but with a considerable limp in doing so. We had the Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow, on the early line earlier today. He compared it to the high ankle sprain that Mahomes suffered back in the divisional round of the 2023 postseason against Jacksonville, where Mahomes, of course, did play in the second half after suffering the injury. Played again, of course, in the AFC Championship. Led the Chiefs to the first of their 2 consecutive Super Bowls in this run as well. He believes, does the Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow, that if necessary, Mahomes could play quickly. But the fact the Chiefs now have 2 games in the next 10 days, that for Saturday at home on a short week against the Texans, maybe not overly likely. And with the quick turnaround having to head to Pittsburgh on Christmas on that Wednesday, there's a lot of game action, not a lot of rest for KC and Mahomes to be ready. So, Joe, with that said, the Chiefs end the year with a home game currently booked as an underdog in the thought that Mahomes is not going to be able to play. 2.5-point home dog against Houston. They'll head to Pittsburgh. Even with a healthy Mahomes, that's probably a pick'em game on a short week. They end the year on the road in Denver against the Broncos. Joe, they have a 2-game lead, does KC, over Buffalo in the win-loss column right now for that top spot, but the Bills have the direct head-to-head tiebreaker. Buffalo right now, plus 160 to be the 1 seed in the AFC. I bet that earlier this morning because for the Chiefs to hold off the Bills and not have the tiebreaker come into play, KC would have to win 2 of their final 3 if Buffalo wins out. and the Bills have the Patriots twice in a home game against the Jets, in which they will be heavily favored. A lot at stake here with the uncertainty around the injury to Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, and think about the teams that they're playing. Those teams are also fighting for playoff position and to win their divisions, right? So Pittsburgh, Houston, those are all dominant defenses as well. We saw Houston step up with a very good effort against the Miami Dolphins, so it's not going to be easy. And look at the job by Denver yesterday, right? They trailed for the first half. They pick it up. They win by 18 points. And on top of that, they pushed Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes to the limit and lost on a last-second field goal. So now, going a mile high, there's no guarantee that Kansas City is a legitimate number one seed, even with Pat Mahomes there. So we'll see how it plays out. If you're going to get plus money on Buffalo for a number one seed, not bad value. Well, again, I do give the inside edge now to the Buffalo Bills, but that's why they play the games. I mean, New England and obviously the New York Jets seem winnable, but they're still division rivals. Anything could happen.
Buffalo, a 14.5-point home favorite against the New England Patriots this upcoming weekend. Again, short week for the Chiefs. Home game against the Texans. Right now, Kansas City is a 2.5-point home dog, which would indicate the odds makers are uncertain around Mahomes and his status moving forward. Now we'll get to the other marquee matchup in that 4:25 p.m. Eastern time window, the Keystone Clash in Philadelphia. The Eagles' passing game resurgent on Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Birds have won 10 straight. We'll tell you how Philadelphia did so up next on Football Full Circle.
There's smart.
And there's not smart.
Not smart is hope as a strategy. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Keep it here.
And win. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
1972, the Miami Dolphins become the first undefeated team in the NFL, going 14-0. Head coach Don Shula.
We were the only team. It just makes it that much more important. It gives you that much more pride and the accomplishment. And until somebody duplicates it, then we're going to just take a lot of pride.
For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the smart house, not a circuit was stirring, not even a mouse. The children were nestled all snug in their beds. Visions of iPhones danced in their heads. Then arose such a clatter of sensors and lights. From the chimney sprang jolly old Saint Nick. He was chubby and plump, dressed in glowing LEDs from his head to his foot. It flashed and sputtered as he brushed off the soot. Suddenly, a bundle of toys and a motorized gizmo rolled out to a stop. I laughed when I saw this in spite of myself. Then a hatch popped open, and a robot arm went straight to its work, filling all the stockings. And laying a finger aside of his nose, giving a nod, his jetpack blazing up the chimney he rose. Away they flew, chased by a live streaming drone that rose from the thistle.
Happy Christmas to all and to all a good night.
Follow me at Capalbo on Twitter and stay tuned to The Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
The early line.
Who do you think ends up with a victory on Sunday in SoFi?
The team that does not turn the ball over, Ben. Am I nuts to think that 45.5 is too low? Given the injuries that we have and given how we've seen the Chargers defense against competent offenses, I think this is going to be a crazy shootout.
It's the early line with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Weekdays, 8 a.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on the SportsGrid Radio Network. Wherever you go,
there you are.
Download the SportsGrid mobile app and we'll be right there with you.
So now you can get the winning edge
Anywhere.
Even while the wife's talking to you.
if you got an earbud.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle. Joe, we talked about Detroit's defense dealing with a ton of significant injuries. Aleem McNeil, Carlton Davis, to mention the guys that were already on IR entering Week 15. More terrible injury news for the Lions. David Montgomery has suffered an MCL injury in his knee. He is going to get a second opinion, but is out indefinitely the rest of his season. now very much in question. The Lions looked like a Super Bowl favorite. In fact, were booked as such entering this weekend. Still the second best price to win Super Bowl 59, but key injuries, Joe, are going to hurt the Lions' outlook the remainder of the way.
Yeah, it's almost like the dam is, starting to break, right? You can only go so much and so far, and think about winning 11 straight, and they did it in much of the year without Aiden Hutchinson that got injured earlier in the year, and they overcame that, and their offense could outscore or play with anybody, and that really carried this team. And then all of a sudden now you have not just one of your best running backs and a dual threat, coming out of the backfield, catching and running it, but, an emotional leader to that offense. He's one of the veterans that a lot of the young guys look to. And even though they can overcome it from a productivity standpoint with Jahmyr Gibbs, it's always good to have fresh legs in there at all times, right? David Montgomery, one of the best inside runners potentially in the NFC and all of, the NFL for that matter. Great vision and just a part of that team, especially around the goal line. We talk about goal line carries. It's like a sure thing when David Montgomery is in there. So how does this affect the mindset more so than the X's and O's? I think obviously running back is the one position you could build up. Backups can step in and you can make up for that. But what happens to the locker room knowing that one of their best players is now out for the year potentially?
Detroit will try to bounce back after suffering their first loss since week 2 yesterday to Buffalo on the road in Chicago this upcoming Sunday. Final Monday night game of the year, week 17 against the San Francisco 49ers. Maybe not the grueling game we expected in the second to last week of the regular season. Then a home game against the Vikings that could decide the division. We'll talk about that a little bit later on with the Vikings in action on this Monday night in a double header. Joe, Detroit's still the favorites at minus 125 to be that one seed within the NFC, but the market's starting to shift because of the Lions' loss yesterday in Philly's 10th consecutive win. The Eagles are now also 12-2, hammering the Steelers at home 27-13. Philly covers as a 5.5-point home favorite. Total of 42.5 does stay under. But, Joe, the conversation for this Eagles team all week long, despite 9 straight, now make it 10 consecutive victories, was the lack of passing attack. Well, Jalen Hurts turned that on its head yesterday. 290 yards, 2 passing scores, and a rushing touchdown. More yards yesterday than the previous 2 games combined for Hurts. And there seemed to be some locker room strife between the quarterback Hurts and his number 1 target, A.J. Brown. So much for that. 8 grabs, 110 yards, and a touchdown for Brown yesterday, and the 2-touchdown win over the Steelers.
Yeah, all that mattered was that A.J. Brown had 8 receptions, 110 yards, and a touchdown. Yeah. Pittsburgh could have won that game 27-13, and A.J. Brown would have celebrated like it was a win. That's all that matters, right? Not the 10 straight for this team and potentially the hottest team in the NFL right now. A.J. Brown clearly, very happy that he scored that touchdown doing the dance with Jalen Hurts. Kumbaya, hey, we're back. This is it. Look, bottom line is this. That defense, again, stepped up. They dominated in the second half. Their front 7 is playing like we thought they would when they drafted players like Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, and Jalen Carter. They are stepping up. The secondary is a bend but don't break unit. But so what? As long as they are healthy, they are going to be right there in terms of an NFC championship. I honestly believe that. Saquon, a little bit limited against one of the better rush defenses in all of the NFL, but it didn't matter. Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown took over, and this team is complete. The only thing and question mark with Philly was the defense, and they've answered the bell over the past 10 weeks.
No doubt about it, Joe. 10 straight wins, 7 of those 10 victories to the under as that Eagles defense continues to make plays. Jalen Hurts, 3 total touchdowns as we shared. Maybe A.J. Brown not all that pleased with Devontae Smith having more targets and catches. I kid. Philly is 1-10 straight, and with the injury news to the Lions, now only a 30-cent gap for the team that is favored to win the conference within the NFC. Detroit still at 2-1. Philly plus 230. The rest of the Sunday slate and its implications next.
The Winning Edge.
You've got it.
But not everybody has it, because not everybody listens to us.
But we're working on that.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Progressive presents the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
20, still on his feet, 10, 5, and Cook is in for the touchdown. His second rushing touchdown of the game, goes 41 yards.
There's the action on Bills Radio in a big 48-42 win over the Lions on Sunday. Buffalo withstood a 21-point attack from the Lions in the fourth quarter. Josh Allen ran for 2 scores in the first quarter and threw a pair of touchdown passes in the second half. The result snapped Detroit's franchise record 11-game winning streak. The AFC East champion Bills improved to 11-3. They've won 8 of 9. The NFC North leading Lions dropped to 12-2. Jared Goff matched a career best by throwing 5 touchdown passes. The result gives Minnesota a chance to pull into a tie for the division lead with a win against Chicago tonight. Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
I love spreading joy with gifts this time of year, but I try not to spread my budget too thin. Luckily, Kohl's has come through for me once again. I just went and used a 25% off coupon to score so many great gifts under $20, like cozy pajamas and fleece, amazing gift sets, and beauty must-haves. So if you're looking to give more for less this season, get to Kohl's. Select styles. Offers end December 24th. Some exclusions apply. See store or Kohl's.com for details.
Flo here from Progressive to tell you how you get more than great savings with us. You get customer service access through our mobile app, online chat, or by phone.
That's a lot of ways I can get in touch with you. I see what's going on here. You can't name favorites, but I'm your #1 customer.
Actually, we offer all our customers these ways to contact us.
I'm sure you give just any customer your personal
company
contact info.
Well, you did call us more than any other customer this year. So in that sense, you are our #1 customer.
Get help from Progressive through the website, app, chat, or phone. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
Days are getting cooler.
The shadows are getting longer.
You know what that means.
It's football weather. So bundle up and keep it here for all the latest strategies and gridiron information.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on FFC, we recap the entirety of the NFL Week 15 Sunday slate. That includes Sunday night in Seattle. The Seahawks riding a 4-game win streak, looking to make it 5 in the previous 4, all outright as a dog. They were a 3-point underdog at home against the Green Bay Packers, but the win streak comes to a close. Green Bay makes a statement, cruising comfortably in the Northwest to a 30-13 win over the Seahawks. Green Bay now 10-4 this year, covering as that 3-point road favorite. 47.5 stays under. For Green Bay, Joe, clean, efficient night for Jordan Love, who had thrown an interception in his first 8 games of the year. Now in the last 5, no INTs for Jordan Love, or within the last 4. 2 touchdowns, no turnovers last night. Romeo Doubs catching both of those touchdown tosses for Seattle. Not just the end of a 4-game win streak, but Geno Smith had to exit the game in the third quarter with a knee injury as well.
Yeah, this game, though, was more about Josh Jacobs. He took the game over right from the get-go. I think he touched the ball, Ben, on the first 8 or 9 touches of the game to establish the 7-0 lead. Did catch a screen pass and took it for 17 yards, everything. This was about the offensive line for Green Bay. Seattle had won 4 straight. They were much better in run support, winning games with an offense and defensive lines that were very physical. And last night on the road, Green Bay took the game to Seattle. They started right from the get-go, didn't back down, and they forced the game on Geno Smith. And again, that is the biggest thing when you look at Seattle big picture, not to take away from them an 8-6 football team, but overall, just think that they're punching above their weight. They beat up on teams that they're supposed to, but against more physical teams that are elite or potentially NFC contenders, I think that's where they struggle. And Green Bay really asserted themselves. I honestly believe, Ben, Green Bay is there right under Philadelphia. Again, Detroit, Philly right now, 1 and 2 respectively. I would probably put Philly first. But you know what? Green Bay isn't that far behind with Minnesota. This is a 4-man race, and you know what? Dominant effort, and see if they can continue over the next 3 weeks.
The Packers more than likely are not going to win the NFC North. The Lions are still a hefty favorite. The Vikings have the second best shot. But Green Bay right now battling for postseason positioning atop those wild card standings alongside Minnesota and trying to hold off the Commanders to dictate where they would go on the road in the opening round of the postseason. A 7-1 price on Green Bay, Lisi Guy, like you mentioned. That's fourth best in the NFC, $5 behind Detroit. A little less than $5.50 behind that of Philadelphia. Minnesota mixed in between with the third best number at plus 650. A big game, though, for Seattle because with the loss for the Seahawks, a close of that 4-game win streak, they are now 8-6. So too are the Rams. These two teams will end the season against one another in Los Angeles. But as of right now, because the Rams won the first matchup in Seattle, the Rams are in first place in the NFC West and a stronger favorite to claim the division at minus 145. Joe, speaking of some important playoff positioning yesterday around the NFL, what a second half it was for the Buccaneers in LA, not against the Rams, of course, but against the Chargers. Tampa was down 17-13 at the break against the Bolts. It was all Buccaneers in the second half. All 27 points scored in the final two quarters by Tampa Bay as they blow out the Bolts 40-17 outright as a 3-point underdog. A total of 45 on the hook. Sky's over.
Yeah, I mean, that game, I watched that game as well. I was on the over 45.5. I altered it up to 50.5. And the biggest thing is, hey, Mike Evans, when he's healthy, look out. 156 yards, 2 big touchdown passes. But again, you know, the difference with Tampa Bay, they're just not a throwing team anymore. Last year with Canales, they were averaging around 89 rushing yards per game, one of the worst in the NFL. With Bucky Irvin and Rashad White, they're averaging around 135 rushing yards per game. Very balanced. They took that game over in the second half, Ben, with the offensive line. Bucky Irvin was running wild on that defense. Yeah. So, again, I think they're plateaued a little bit because I don't think their defense is legit, meaning like some of the others that we mentioned in the conference. But you know what? You get Baker in that type of playoff setting, they can upset anybody and be a real wild card. Definitely an NFC contender in terms of making maybe a first-round win in the playoffs.
The Bucs have overcome a ton of injuries this year. Bucky Irving was questionable for the game. 15 carries, 117 yards. And the Chargers were the team that would establish the run at all costs. 11 attempts for only 32 yards yesterday against that Bucs defense. Great up front with the injuries in the back end to guys like Antoine Winfield Jr. Justin Herbert banged up in the game, dealing with a list of injuries. Glad McConkey has been injured for the Chargers. The season that started, Joe, taking the onus off of Justin Herbert and running the football, under in 7 of the first 8 for LA. They've now gone over in 4 of the last 6 because they're not running it as effectively. The defense has been tested a ton more. Yesterday, that dam broke in LA as the Bucs put up 40. Mike Evans, who has missed a considerable amount of time this year, now just 251 yards away from his 11th consecutive, that would be all 11 years played in the NFL, of 1,000 yards. He had a $159 yesterday and 2 scores. The Bucs, a minus 490 favorite to win the NFC South, trying to outpace the Falcons right now. Tremendous stuff out of Tampa. Yesterday, huge game for the AFC wildcard chase within the AFC. The Bolts fall back to 8-6. The Broncos now 9-5 in front of their divisional mate in those wildcard standings, although it might not have been the case had Jonathan Taylor just held on to the football for another inch or two. Indianapolis at Mile High, leading 13-7 early in the third quarter after intercepting Bo Nix. Again, Nix threw 3 picks yesterday against Indy. 41-yard run just a few plays later by JT. Seemed as though he had walked in for a touchdown, but he fumbled the football. He dropped it, as some stupidly do in celebration, before breaking the plane. And because of it, Lisi, it was ruled a touchback. The Colts never scored again. The Broncos scored 24 straight. Denver won 31-13, even covering as a 4.5 point home favorite against Indianapolis. A game that Indy could ill afford to lose. and they turned the football over 5 times in doing so.
Yeah, unbelievable. They had also a trick play when it was 17-13 in the fourth quarter, covering, and they threw it back to AR. It gets a pick six the other way, and that's the cover right then and there. You're dead and buried from the Colts' perspective. But again, on the road, you want to run the football. They were able to do that. They built I believe, a 10-0 first half lead. And then Jonathan Taylor, all these guys, running backs, wide receivers, they cry for the ball in terms of the game plan, right? They get the ball. And then when they score a touchdown, they're so quick to just chuck it, and they want to make a photo op because he couldn't wait to get into a celebration dance. Run to the back of the end zone, drop the ball, and then you would have been up. I mean, they were up 13-7, 20-7. Yeah. You make Denver completely one-dimensional, possibly, and Bo Nix was not playing well. Stupid. No. It happens time and time again. And I don't know. I don't know when they'll learn. Players need to understand. Score the touchdown first, celebrate later.
You see it in high school and college football. Maybe you see it with younger guys in the NFL. Jonathan Taylor, though, JT making that critical mistake. And what a day it was. 4 mistakes from Indianapolis, 5 total turnovers. Anthony Richardson, sub 50% completion again. 2 INTs as well. Technically a fumble from A.D. Mitchell on the pass back to the quarterback on the trick play that Nick Bonito took to the house. Bo Nix threw 3 picks, and Denver won by 18. The Broncos are now 7-0 against the spread when booked as a favorite, by the way, covering by an average margin close to 2 touchdowns per game. More from Sunday around the NFL next on Football Full Circle.
Yeah, it's getting cooler.
Football weather is here.
Stay tuned for all the latest odds, strategies, and info. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
ABC News has agreed to pay $15 million toward Donald Trump's presidential library to settle a defamation lawsuit over anchor George Stephanopoulos' inaccurate on-air assertion that the president-elect had been found civilly liable for raping writer E. Jean Carroll. A part of the settlement made public Saturday, ABC News posted an editor's note to its website expressing regret over Stephanopoulos' statements during a March 10th segment on his This Week program. The network will also pay $1 million in legal fees to the law firm of Trump's attorney. Roughly 70,000 gallons of oil from a pipeline spilled into the ground in Wisconsin. The problem was discovered November 11th in Jefferson County, 60 miles west of Milwaukee, by an Enbridge energy technician. Enbridge said the spill on the company's Line 6 was caused by a faulty connection on a pump transfer pipe at the Enbridge Cambridge station. It was an estimated 1,650 barrels, which is equivalent to about 70,000 gallons.
I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
This holiday season, Straight Talk Wireless is letting you say yes a lot more with real unlimited data. Yes to sharing pics of the ugliest holiday sweaters. Yes to checking weather on the go for surprise sledding trips. And with a free phone at sign up, let the yes-tivities begin.
No way!
Yes way. Straight Talk, real unlimited data. Available at Walmart or straighttalk.com. Offer valid through 1/5/25 while supplies last at participating stores. Taxes and fees apply. Requires in-store activation on select single-line plans. Limit of 2 phones per customer. For network management practices, visit straighttalk.com.
With Progressive's Name Your Price tool, you can easily find coverage options that fit your budget. If only it was that easy to name your baby.
How about Jaden?
Nope.
Okay. Michael?
Went to middle school with a glue-eating Michael.
Sebastian?
Dated one in college.
How about Damien?
Vampire name.
All right. Greg?
Not feeling it.
Okay. No worries. No worries. Jeffrey?
Oh, love that one.
Wait, really?
No.
Find coverage options that fit your budget with Progressive's Name Your Price tool. Get a quote at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Ask any player and they'll tell you any advantage is important.
That's where we come in.
SportsGrid delivers gaming strategies and analysis 7 days a week.
The winning edge.
It's your advantage to more winning
more often.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
A slew of important games on Sunday in the NFL with playoff implications. Joe, if anybody is going to catch any of our 3 wildcard teams in the AFC right now, it does not seem overly likely after a couple of teams like the Colts and the Dolphins squandered some opportunities yesterday based on turning the football over. Houston and Miami in H-Town. The Texans win a football game. despite just 181 yards of total offense, and they won by 20-12 being that final score. Houston covers as a 2.5-point home favorite. Total of 46.5 stays under. Because of the Indianapolis loss and the Texans win, Houston claims the AFC South at a 9-5 mark for a second consecutive year. But the issue really for Miami yesterday, the offense. Tua Tagovailoa, 196 yards, a touchdown, 3 interceptions, 2 taken away by Derek Stingley Jr. Miami falls to 6-8, looking up at the wild card race by at least 2 games with only 3 weeks left.
Yeah, I mean, this came down to 2 factors. Obviously, on the road, if you lose the turnover battle, you're not going to win. And if you don't run the football effectively, and this was more about Tua, obviously the turnovers killed you and you didn't step up, but they only rushed for 2.7 yards per carry. Okay, that is a bigger problem right now, is that Miami, and I continue to beat this drum, they struggle with more physical offense and defensive lines, especially teams that are over 500. I believe McDaniel now in his career, 3-15 against teams that are over 500 straight up. That is absolutely pathetic. I'm sorry. You could have the best offensive philosophy, but if you don't adjust, and you certainly can't coach up the offense and defensive lines as a staff, you're not going anywhere. So I'm happy they lost, because maybe they will move on from Mike McDaniel now. Tua, can he win the big game? Only time will tell. Hopefully he can, because I do believe in this team somewhat, but they got to change it. They have to change it from the top end, and I don't know if they will this year.
So the Colts, the Dolphins, and the Bengals, who won yesterday on the road in Nashville, all at 6-8, but at least 2 games back right now of the Chargers, who are 8-6. All 3 of those teams would have to win out and then get a lot of help from both LA and or Denver to even sniff a potential playoff bid. The Bengals did win, Joe, 37-27 in Nashville against the Titans. Joe Burrow's 6th consecutive game with at least 3 passing scores in what was a wild game in Tennessee. The Bengals win and cover as a 6.5-point road favorite. Total of 46.5 goes way over, as the Bengals have played 6 of their last 7 games to the over. Joe, a game that featured 10 total turnovers, including 4 from Will Levis, who was benched for Mason Rudolph. 3 interceptions, 1 fumble out of Levis. Tennessee, man, you made a bad bet drafting him 2nd overall in the 2nd round 2 years ago.
Yeah, where's all those draft nicks now, right? Saying that he should have been a top selection in the draft, right? Signed, sealed, delivered. His NFL career most likely relegated to a career backup if he sticks that long. We'll see. I mean, here's the problem, a big picture, Tennessee. Couldn't win at home, 1-6 overall. Now, Cincinnati, out of all those teams that you mentioned, Miami and the Colts right now, Cincinnati has the best shot, I would say, just because of Burrow and Chase to maybe make a run, get to 9-8, and then hopefully everything breaks their way. But that defense needs to get fixed, because just think about it. They gave up 27 points to that Tennessee offense. That's still pathetic on how bad that Bengals defense has been this year.
Yeah, it certainly is. The Titans have not covered in any of their 11 losses. Cincy on the road, 7-1 against the spread, 5-0. Perfect against the number as a road favorite. But to Joe's point, the Bengals have lost to the Chargers already. They would need the Chargers to lose out. The Bengals still have to play the Broncos. That comes up in Week 17. It actually is probably best if Denver loses out, including to the Bengals in that Week 17 matchup, for Cincy to try to earn a playoff spot. But Denver's minus 1,100 to see the AFC postseason. The top team in the wild card standings in the AFC right now, that's Baltimore. Joe, largest spread of the year in favor of a team. The Ravens were a 16.5-point favorite in MetLife against the Giants. We thought it would be easy. It was even easier than expected. Baltimore wins 35-14 over the G-Men. Lamar Jackson throws for 290 yards and 5 touchdowns. I don't know what else you can say about the Giants, who are 2-12 this year, who have been an underdog in 29 of 31 games since the start of last year, a year that followed a playoff berth and win on the road in Minnesota. They're 12-16-1 against the spread. Joe, for the Giants, it's about the future. It's a new quarterback coming through. Tim Boyle played the second half after Tommy DeVito was ruled out with a concussion, but it's also probably a new coaching staff and front office. I don't think Joe Shane and Brian Daboll can survive what we are seeing right now out of the G-Men.
Yeah, and if they do survive in any capacity, most likely Malik Neighbors won't be there, right? Because he'll be another player that most likely will be like, get me out of here. I can't stay. I'm used to at least winning and putting up numbers. I'm not doing it in this offense. So again, this is going back to, Ben, to the days of like 1976 with Joe Pisarcik and Ray Perkins. I mean, this can't get any worse for the New York Giants.
No.
And I'm still a big believer that maybe Brian Daboll is just a better coordinator than he is a coach. There are certain coaches that we've seen like that. North Turner's another one. Couldn't coach his way out of a paper bag when he got handed the reins. Just a better coordinator, and that's what happens with these guys. They only see one way, and it's unfortunate that his best win came in his first year with Danny Dimes and knocking off Kirk Cousins, another gutless team back in the day.
Yeah. Way to take it out on the 2022 Minnesota Vikings. You know who is not gutless? That's Darren Rizzi, the Rizzler, trying to cover games as the Saints did yesterday in New Orleans. But about a bad clock snafu by the officiating crew that allowed New Orleans to score on the final play of regulation. A 2-point conversion, though, does come up short against the Commanders. Washington wins 20-19. In New Orleans, the Saints cover as a 7.5-point dog. The rest of Sunday into Monday next on FFC here on SportsGrid Radio.
The boys of summer become the champions of fall.
The World Series is on its way.
And SportsGrid brings you every angle. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channels dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and SiriusXM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Money Line at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right. For about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back. But you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. That's 800-797-1292.
Think of us as your cool roommate that has this innate gift of somehow always picking winners and never bugs you about doing the dishes or paying rent. Sports gaming strategies and information 24/7.
Get the winning edge.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle. Joe, just some tidying up, if you will, of the laundry list of games from an NFL Sunday. The Arizona Cardinals snap a 3-game skid, get back into the win column, keeping some hope alive for a run to the NFC West title, winning 30-17 over the Patriots. covering as a 6.5-point favorite. Total of 46.5 does eke its way over out in the desert.
Yeah, I was very impressed. That was my best bet from the side perspective with Arizona. I think they needed the game to keep in point and keep pace with LA. That one on Thursday night. And with the loss now for Seattle, they're back in the mix for a potential NFC West title. They have 7 wins, back to 500. They struggled, but, they got back to running the football. James Conner, well over 100 yards, a dominant offensive line effort.
Yeah.
And that's all it takes. They are effective, Ben. When James Conner is carrying the rock between 15 and 20 times a game, when they don't rely on Kyler Murray as much, they win games more times than not.
Joe, yesterday was the first game for Carolina booked as a favorite since the final month of the 2022 NFL season, snapping a streak of 33 consecutive games as a dog. Turns out the Panthers did not live up to the odds expectation. The Cowboys win outright as a 2.5-point road underdog in Charlotte, 30-14. Cooper Rush, 214 yards, 3 touchdowns, $116 and a score to CeeDee Lamb. The Cowboys not mathematically eliminated, although they are 6-8.
Yeah, I can't buy into this team. They're so helter-skelter, right? They win games they're not supposed to, lose games that potentially they should. And then that's been the product of their season. Again, statistically, yeah, I guess Cooper Rush is putting up some yards and numbers. CeeDee Lamb got back into the end zone, but the defense still, Ben, is not a dominant group, right? Could they eke their way into the playoffs? No way. I'm going to say absolutely not. The teams that are ahead of them are much more complete. And if they ever went up against the likes of, Minnesota or Green Bay in any type of wild card situation, I think they would get boat raced in that type of situation.
They play the Commanders one more time, Joe. That is the hope for Dallas, if they could win that game to end out the regular season, to try to catch them in that spot. I'm not sure it's going to be the case for the Cowboys, but a win on the road nonetheless. The only game yesterday, Joe, on Sunday, between two teams that were both mathematically eliminated, that were the Jets and the Jags. A vintage game out of Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, but just a little too late. Aaron throws for 289 and 3 touchdowns, 198 and 2 scores to Devontae Adams as well. The Jets win in Jacksonville. They cover as a 3.5-point favorite, but that's all it means.
Yeah, well, it's just like old times. Hey, Tay, we're doing it. Look, we're doing it. We won our 4th game, Tay. We did it. He threw a fade pattern to Devontae Adams, okay, on a 1st and goal or 2nd and goal from the inch line. He could have either snuck it or handed it off to Breece Hall for the quick time. He had to throw the fade to Tay to give him his 100th career touchdown. And the Jets come running over like they saved the season. Amazing. Pathetic.
Yeah.
Pathetic. That was a pathetic performance. Great. I was happy that they sailed through the total. That was my best bet on Pro Football today. Ching! Yeah.
I heard it was good you went with that bet and not a game out in Cleveland that you can trust in your advisor to guide you to the right side. That's what I had heard.
Wait a second. He just told me about the weather. He didn't give me the pick. Let's not. He just said he said there's weather. I said, you know what? All right. Thank you. It's not like he guided. Let's not get crazy with the guiding now. If he was guiding me, my best bet would have been a 1.5 to over touchdown bet. Okay? Over 1.5 touchdowns for Baker Mayfield would have been the bet. Let's pump the brakes on.
You know what one of his favorite bets is for tonight? Sam Darnold over 1.5 passing touchdowns. We've got a doubleheader of Monday Night Football to end out Week 15. Vikings 7-point favorite at home against the Bears. The Falcons trying to snap a 4-game skid to get back into NFC South contention. They're a 5.5-point road favorite out in Las Vegas against the Raiders. What is Joe Lisi's best bet for the Monday night doubleheader?
Over Minnesota, Chicago. Let's not forget, last time they played was 30-27. Overtime game, both Darnold and Caleb threw combined for 670.
Yeah.
Over the 44.5.
I think Kirk Cousins needs to have a big night. I'll go over 1.5 passing touchdowns for a guy that has not thrown one in the last 4 games. Knew you would like that one. He's Joe Lisi. I'm Ben Stevens. Football Full Circle returns tomorrow, noon Eastern Time.
Now you've done it.
You found the advantage for gaming, odds, and more. But we call it the winning edge for short. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.